For 200 years, the vampire boy touched his ear. Every immortal healer said the same thing. Nothing we can do. His father conquered kingdoms, lived through centuries, commanded darkness itself, but couldn't save his own son. He spent fortunes that would bankrupt nations, summoned ancient beings from across the world, begged creatures older than civilization to look again. They all said the same thing: blood moon curse, irreversible, accept it. Then a broke college student noticed something no immortal had seen in 2 centuries, and what she pulled from that vampire child's ear would shatter everything the supernatural world believed about their kind. Marcus Thorne was the vampire king. Castle in upstate New York, power stretching across continents, wealth accumulated over 800 years of existence, private blood banks, political influence that moved elections, respect that made ancient vampires kneel. But his son Damien was born during a blood moon. 16 years old, never heard a sound. While other vampire children could detect heartbeats from miles away, Damien lived in complete silence. Marcus tried everything. Romanian blood witches who'd survived the Dark Ages, Japanese yokai healers who predated written history, Egyptian necromancers who remembered when the pyramids were new, beings who charged more than most humans earned in lifetimes. They drank Damien's blood, performed dark rituals, consulted forbidden grimoires. All of them said the same thing. The blood moon took his hearing. This curse runs deeper than bone. You must accept this. But Marcus couldn't accept it because Damien was all he had left. His wife Elizabeth died 16 years ago, burned to ash by dawn while protecting their newborn son from vampire hunters. Marcus held her as the sunrise turned her to dust. She'd been trying to say something, her lips moving as the light consumed her. Promise me, he'll hear the world. Someday. So Marcus kept searching, kept paying, kept begging God, or whatever gods listened to creatures like him, for an answer. What he didn't know: the answer wasn't coming from the immortal realm. It was coming from the human girl he'd just hired to clean his castle floors. Sarah Mitchell was barely 23. No supernatural abilities, no ancient knowledge, just a college dropout drowning in student loans trying to scrape together enough money to adopt her 12-year-old deaf sister from foster care. But she noticed something about Damien that every immortal healer had missed. Something dark in his ear. Something wrong. And one evening, while Marcus was away at the Vampire Council, she made a decision that would either save that boy's existence or start a war between humans and vampires. What happened next? You need to see it for yourself. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I believe this story found you tonight for a reason. The Thorne estate stretched across 200 acres of upstate New York wilderness. From the main road, it looked like something out of a Gothic fairy tale: stone towers piercing the sky, iron gates that groaned like wounded animals, windows that seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it. But inside, silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that felt like rest. This silence was suffocating, heavy, like something had died centuries ago and was still rotting in the walls. Servants moved through the hallways without speaking. Their footsteps were calculated, careful. They'd learned quickly. Lord Thorne preferred things quiet. No music echoed through these halls, no television noise, no laughter bouncing off ancient stone. Just silence. And somewhere in that silence, a father was drowning in 800 years of guilt. Sarah Mitchell stood at the castle gates on a Tuesday evening in October, clutching her ratty duffel bag with both hands, trying to steady her breathing. This was it. Her last chance. Back in Brooklyn, her sister Emma was sitting in her fourth foster home in 2 years. 12 years old, deaf since birth, bouncing between families who didn't understand sign language and didn't care to learn. The adoption lawyer's words still rang in Sarah's ears. You need stable income, Miss Mitchell. 50,000 minimum to prove you can provide adequate care. 50,000. Sarah had $847 in her checking account and student loans that would follow her to the grave. But this job, personal maid to a vampire lord, paid $8,000 a month. Cash. No questions asked. 6 months of this and she could bring Emma home. 6 months of cleaning floors for creatures who drank blood. And her sister would finally have a real family. Sarah didn't care about the danger, didn't care about the stories, servants who disappeared, humans who went mad, maids who walked into sunrise like they'd been compelled. She just needed the money. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Blackwood, met her at the door. Severe face, silver hair pulled back tight, eyes that looked like they'd witnessed the fall of empires and felt nothing. She was human, but something about decades serving vampires had leached the warmth from her. You're Sarah Mitchell. Yes, ma'am. You'll clean. You'll stay invisible. You'll keep your head down and your mouth shut. Mrs. Blackwood's voice was crisp, cold. Lord Thorne doesn't tolerate disruptions, especially around his son. Sarah nodded. I understand. Do you? Mrs. Blackwood stepped closer. Because the last girl didn't. She thought she could help the young master. Thought she could cure him with her human optimism and her prayers. Her lips twisted. They found her walking toward the sunrise 3 days later. Lord Thorne doesn't appreciate interference. Sarah's stomach dropped. I'm just here to work, ma'am. That's all. Mrs. Blackwood studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment, then nodded curtly. Good. Follow me. As they walked through the castle, Sarah kept her eyes down, but she couldn't help noticing things. The silence followed Sarah everywhere. She'd been at the castle for 2 weeks now, and the weight of it pressed against her chest like a stone. She cleaned marble floors that stretched forever, dusted portraits of dead vampires whose eyes seemed to follow her, scrubbed windows that looked out on forests where nothing living dared to go. But mostly, she watched Damien. He spent his days alone in the East Wing library, surrounded by books he'd never heard read aloud, building model ships he'd never heard crash against imaginary waves. 16 years old, but moving like someone much older, like the weight of silence had aged him in ways time couldn't touch. The other servants avoided him, not cruelly, fearfully, like his curse might be contagious. Blood moon children bring bad luck, she'd heard one vampire guard whisper. The mother's death marked him. Best to keep distance. But Sarah saw something different. She saw a kid who pressed his hand against library windows, watching birds he couldn't hear sing. She saw how he'd look up hopefully whenever his father passed by, which wasn't often, and how his shoulders would sink a little lower each time Marcus walked away without stopping. And she saw how he touched his right ear, over and over. A wince crossing his face each time. That wasn't mystical suffering. That was pain. On her 3rd week, Sarah left something on the library table where Damien always sat, a folded paper crane made from old book pages, and a note in ASL. You're not alone. She didn't wait to see if he'd find it, but the next morning the crane was gone. In its place, a sketch, a detailed drawing of the castle at sunrise, something Damien could never safely see himself. And at the bottom, 2 words in careful handwriting. Thank you. Sarah pressed the drawing to her chest, eyes burning. That evening, she brought him hot chocolate, the real kind, made with blood and cream the way vampires preferred. He stared at it, confused, then looked at her. She signed. Everyone deserves something warm. Something cracked in his expression. He signed back, movements hesitant. Why are you being nice to me? Why wouldn't I be? Everyone else stopped trying. Sarah's heart shattered. She sat down across from him, signing slowly. I have a sister. She's 12. Deaf. Like you. She's in foster care because I can't afford to adopt her yet. But I'm going to. Because she deserves someone who won't stop trying. Damien's eyes went wide. You understand? More than you know. For the first time in 16 years, Damien smiled. Really smiled. They developed a rhythm after that. Secret things. Sarah would leave him candy from the human world. Gummy bears, chocolate bars, things the vampire servants never thought to offer. He'd leave her drawings of constellations with their names written in shaky English. She taught him new signs, not the formal ones, his expensive. Tutors taught, but personal ones. The way Emma signed sister with extra flourish. The sign for hope that looked like hands opening toward the sky. And Damien taught her about his world. How vampires could taste emotions in blood. How his father hadn't smiled since his mother died. How sometimes Damien wondered if the silence was easier than hearing a world that didn't want him anyway. That's not true, Sarah signed fiercely. The world wants you. Your father wants you. He's just forgotten how to show it. One afternoon, while dusting the hallway, Sarah overheard Mrs. Blackwood talking to a vampire guard. The human girl's getting too close to the young master. Should we tell Lord Thorne? Not yet. But watch her. Humans who care too much about that boy always end badly. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat on her bed, Emma's last letter clutched in her hands. When can I come home, Sarah? This family doesn't understand my signs. I'm so lonely. Sarah looked out her window at the castle library where a lamp still burned. Damien was awake too, probably building another model ship in the silence. 2 lonely kids, both trapped, both waiting for someone to care enough to save them. She made a decision then. She'd keep watching Damien, keep paying attention, because if there was even a chance, even the smallest possibility that his deafness wasn't a curse but something fixable, she had to try. The next morning, she found him in the library again. This time, he wasn't building ships. He was clutching his ear, face twisted in pain, trying not to let anyone see. Sarah's chest tightened. She knelt beside him, signed. How long has it hurt like this? Always, he signed back, but worse lately. Like something's growing. Growing. Sarah's blood went cold. She remembered her folklore professor mentioning hunter weapons that grew with their victims, feeding on their life force. Can I look? She signed. Just look. I promise I won't hurt you. Damien hesitated. Then, slowly, he tilted his head toward the window light. Sarah looked into his ear canal, and there it was. Small, dark, crystalline, pulsing with sick energy. Her hand started shaking. This wasn't a curse, this was a weapon, and it was killing him slowly. She pulled back, mind racing. She should tell Marcus. Should tell someone with authority, with power. But she'd heard the stories. The last maid who tried to help disappeared. That night, Sarah made her way to the forbidden section of the castle library. Ancient texts, dusty grimoires, books that predated America itself. She searched for hours until she found it. Hunter's Cursed Spikes, a complete analysis. The entry was horrifying. Spikes embedded during blood moons designed to grow with vampire children, hidden from immortal healers who expected magical curses instead of physical weapons. The only way to remove them? Silver instruments and steady hands. Sarah closed the book, heart hammering. She could do this. She'd removed splinters from Emma 100 times. This was just bigger, more dangerous, potentially fatal. But doing nothing was definitely fatal. She stared at the silver tweezers in the castle's first aid kit, kept for human servants who occasionally needed them. Mrs. Blackwood's warning echoed. Humans who care too much about that boy always end badly. Sarah grabbed the tweezers anyway. Tomorrow. If Damien showed pain again tomorrow, she'd act. She wouldn't let another person she cared about suffer in silence. Not again. Sarah's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She knelt beside Damien on the cold library floor, silver tweezers gripped between her fingers. The metal burned slightly. Silver always reacted to vampire magic, even residual traces. But it was the only thing that could touch dark magic without spreading it. "This is going to hurt," she signed with one hand. "I'm so sorry." Damien's eyes were wide, terrified, but he nodded. Trust. After 16 years of ancient healers who brought only pain and false hope, he was trusting a human girl he'd known for 3 weeks. Sarah whispered a prayer, not to God. She didn't know if God listened to prayers whispered in vampire castles, but to whoever was listening. "Please let me be right. Please don't let me hurt him." She tilted his head gently toward the candlelight. There it was, buried deep in his ear canal. A black crystalline spike, no bigger than a splinter, pulsing with sickly dark energy. It seemed to sense her looking, writhing slightly, burrowing deeper. Hunter's cursed spike. She'd found sketches in the forbidden section of the library, ancient texts describing how vampire hunters would embed these during blood moons. They grew with the child, feeding on vampire healing abilities, turning their supernatural strength into a weapon against them. Invisible to immortal healers who expected magical curses, obvious to anyone looking for something physical. Sarah steadied her breathing and moved the silver tweezers into his ear canal. The spike reacted immediately. Dark energy crackled, burning her fingers. She bit back a scream. Damien's body went rigid, every muscle locked. His mouth opened and... a sound. Raw, broken, agonized. The first sound he'd made in 16 years. Sarah's vision blurred with tears, but she couldn't stop now. She hooked the tweezers around the spike's base and pulled. Resistance. The curse fought back, thorns of dark magic slicing into her hand. Blood dripped onto the marble floor. "Come on," she hissed through gritted teeth. "Let him go." She pulled harder. Something gave. The spike slid free with a wet, terrible sound, dissolving into black smoke in her palm. The smoke screamed, actually screamed, before dissipating into nothing. For one heartbeat, silence. Then Damien gasped. A real gasp, loud and desperate and alive. His hands flew to his ears. His eyes went impossibly wide. He looked around the library like he'd never seen it before. Because he hadn't. Not like this. The candle flickering, the ancient clock ticking. His own heartbeat thundering in his chest, the wind outside howling through the towers, the castle's very foundations groaning with age. Sound. Everywhere. Everything. Damien's mouth opened. His vocal cords, unused for 16 years, struggled. But then, I can hear. His voice was rough, unpracticed, beautiful. Sarah sobbed, reaching for him. Yes, yes, you can hear. But before she could touch him, thundering footsteps echoed through the corridor. Heavy, fast, furious. The library doors exploded inward. Marcus Thorne stood in the doorway, eyes blazing red with rage. He saw his son on the floor, saw the blood on Sarah's hands, saw the silver tweezers. "What have you done?" His voice shook the castle walls. He moved with supernatural speed, shoving Sarah aside, grabbing Damien by the shoulders. "What did she do to you?" Damien tried to speak, but his father's voice was too loud, too overwhelming. 16 years of silence shattered by a roar. "Guards!" Marcus bellowed. "Take her to the dungeons! Now!" 2 vampire guards materialized, seizing Sarah's arms. Damien found his voice, desperate and breaking. "No, Father, please, she saved. But Marcus wasn't listening. 800 years of protective instinct, 200 years of failed healers, 16 years of watching his son suffer. It all exploded into blind rage. She touched my son with silver, Marcus snarled. She will burn for this. As they dragged Sarah away, she looked back at Damien. His face was destroyed, tears streaming. She mouthed, "It's okay. You can hear now. That's all that matters." The dungeon doors slammed shut behind her. The dungeon was exactly what Sarah expected. Stone walls weeping with moisture, iron chains bolted into rock, the smell of decay and despair. A single torch flickered, casting shadows that looked like screaming faces. She sat on the cold floor, back against the wall, cradling her burned hand. The silver had left marks, blisters rising across her palm. But the pain didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the memory of Damien's face when he heard his first sound. Worth it. Even if Marcus killed her at sunrise, it was worth it. Footsteps echoed above, voices arguing, angry and sharp. In the throne room, Marcus stood before his assembled council, the dissolved remains of the curse spike in a crystal vial. Something about it bothered him, the way it had reacted to silver, the way Sarah had known exactly where to look. "Summon them," he said quietly. "All of them. Every healer who examined my son in the last 50 years. Mrs. Blackwood hesitated. "My lord?" "Now." Within the hour, 12 immortal healers stood before him. Ancient vampires, blood witches, necromancers who'd walked the earth for millennia. They shifted uncomfortably under Marcus's gaze. He held up the vial. "A human girl found this in my son's ear. A curse spike. Embedded 16 years ago by hunters during the Blood Moon attack." His voice was dangerously soft. "She found it in 3 weeks. You all examined him for decades. So I have one question." The room went cold. "Did any of you see this?" Silence. Long, damning silence. Then one healer, a Romanian vampire named Constantin, 600 years old, broke. "We detected an anomaly, my lord. Years ago." The room exploded. "You what?" Marcus's voice shattered windows. Constantin stumbled backward. "We believed. The prophecies said blood. Moon children bring destruction. We thought if the boy died naturally, the curse on your bloodline would end. We were protecting—" He didn't finish. Marcus's hand was around his throat, lifting him off the ground. "You let my son suffer," Marcus whispered, "because you feared a prophecy?" "My lord, please. You poisoned him. Every treatment, every ritual, you fed the curse instead of fighting it." Marcus's eyes blazed crimson. "My wife died protecting him, and you wanted him dead." He threw Constantine across the room. The ancient vampire crashed through a marble column. Marcus turned to the others. "Get out. All of you. You're banished from my territory. If I see your faces again, I'll greet the sunrise holding your heads." They fled. Mrs. Blackwood approached carefully. "My lord, the human girl." Marcus's rage crumbled. He sank into his throne, centuries of grief crushing down. "I almost killed her," he whispered. "The only person in 200 years who cared enough to actually look at my son, and I threw her in a dungeon." Before Mrs. Blackwood could respond, doors burst open. Damien stood there, face streaked with tears, voice still rough but determined. "The Vampire Council is here," he said, words careful and pronounced. "They're demanding Sarah's execution. They say she violated ancient law. Humans can't touch vampire royalty with silver. It's punishable by burning." Marcus's blood went cold. "They're waiting in the Great Hall," Damien continued. "Father, please. She saved my life. You can't let them—" But Marcus was already moving. In the great hall, 5 vampire lords sat in judgment. The council. Ancient, powerful, merciless. Lord Ashford, eldest among them, spoke. Marcus Thorne, your human servant touched your air with silver. Ancient law is clear. She burns at dawn. Marcus started to speak, but a voice cut through the hall. No. Everyone turned. Damien walked forward, shoulders straight, head high. Speaking for the first time before the council that had ruled vampire kind for 3,000 years. She saw what immortals refused to see, he said, voice growing stronger with each word. She risked everything when ancient ones did nothing. You want to burn her for saving me? Lord Ashford's eyes narrowed. Boy, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Damien interrupted. I understand that for 16 years, healers you trusted poisoned me. I understand my father spent fortunes while your experts let me suffer. I understand that a human girl with student loans cared more about my life than any of you. The hall went silent. Damien's voice broke. If you kill her, you kill the only person who cared enough to save me, and I will never forgive any of you. Marcus stared at his son, really looked at him, for the first time in years. Then the Vampire King knelt. The Vampire King, 800 years old, ruler of the East Coast territories, creature who'd made empires bow, knelt in his own throne. Room before a 23-year-old human girl with student loans and burned hands. The council gasped. Lord Ashford stood outraged. Marcus, what are you? For 200 years, Marcus interrupted, voice breaking. I've ruled with power. I've commanded armies. I've accumulated wealth that would bankrupt nations. I've lived through the fall of kingdoms and the rise of new worlds. He looked at Sarah, still in chains, still bleeding. But I couldn't see what a human girl saw in 3 weeks. I couldn't save my own son from a curse that wasn't even a curse, just a weapon I was too blind to notice. Marcus turned to the council. She broke your ancient law. She touched vampire royalty with silver. But that law was written to prevent harm, and she's the only one who brought healing. So if you want to burn her at dawn, you'll have to burn me too. Lord Ashford's face went purple. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. Marcus stood, still between Sarah and the council. This human girl has more honor than every immortal healer who examined my son. She risked her life, her future, everything she had, for a child who wasn't even her own. Damien stepped forward, voice growing stronger. The law says humans can't harm vampire royalty with silver, but she didn't harm me. She saved me. Your law doesn't account for that because you never imagined a human would care enough to try. The council members looked at each other, uncertain. Lord Ashford spoke carefully. The precedent this sets. The precedent, Marcus cut in, is that we've been wrong. About blood moon children, about curses, about trusting ancient ways without questioning them. His voice turned cold. About letting our own kind slowly murder a child because they feared a prophecy. Silence fell like snow. Finally, Lord Ashford sighed. The girl lives. But she leaves your territory tonight. This incident must not be repeated. No. Everyone turned to Marcus. She stays, under my protection, as Damien's official guardian and teacher. Marcus looked at Sarah. If she'll accept. Sarah's throat tightened. I can't. My sister. I need to. Your sister Emma, Marcus interrupted gently. 12 years old, deaf, currently in her 4th foster home in Brooklyn. He'd done his research. What if I told you I could have her here by morning? Adoption papers filed? Legal guardianship transferred to you? Full scholarship to the finest school for deaf children in the state? Sarah's world tilted. Why would you? Because you gave me my son's voice back. The least I can do is reunite you with your sister. Marcus's expression softened. And because Damien needs someone who sees him as a person, not a cursed prince. You've done more for him in 3 weeks than I've managed in 16 years. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. Yes. God, yes. The chains fell away. 3 days later, a car pulled up to the castle gates. Emma Mitchell stepped out, eyes wide, taking in the Gothic towers and iron gates. She signed frantically. Sarah, what is this place? Your text said you had a surprise, but... Sarah ran to her, sweeping her into a hug. Welcome home. Home? We're staying here, together. No more foster families. No more being apart. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? Damien appeared in the doorway, nervous. Sarah had told him about Emma, but meeting her was different. Emma noticed him immediately. She signed. Hi, I'm Emma. Sarah says you're deaf too? Damien signed back, movement still unpracticed but genuine. I was. For a long time. Your sister saved me. Emma grinned. She's pretty amazing. Yeah, Damien signed, smiling. She really is. That evening, Sarah found Marcus in his study, staring at his wife's portrait. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. Marcus turned. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked peaceful. No. Thank you. You did what 800 years of power couldn't do. You paid attention. Through the window, they watched Damien teaching Emma about the castle, both of them signing and laughing. Damien had started speaking more, but he still preferred signs sometimes. Choice. He could choose silence or sound now. He's playing piano tomorrow, Marcus said softly. First time he'll hear music he's creating. You should be there. I will be. I've missed too many moments already. Marcus paused. You know, Elizabeth would have liked you. She always said the most powerful magic was simply caring when everyone else had stopped. Sarah smiled. Your wife was a smart woman. The next morning, the castle filled with sound for the first time in 16 years. Damien sat at the grand piano, fingers hesitant on the keys. He played a single note, listened to it fade, played another. Then, slowly, a melody formed. Unpracticed, imperfect, but beautiful. Marcus stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face, and for the first time in 16 years, his son could hear those tears fall. Sarah stood beside Emma, both of them watching this vampire boy discover music. Emma signed, It's beautiful. Yeah, Sarah signed back. It really is. And in that moment, in a castle that had known only silence and grief, a new family began to form, built not on power or wealth or ancient bloodlines, but on something simpler and stronger, people who cared enough to see each other's pain, and who had the courage to do something about it.